In our Here's How series, we describe simple processes in TreeProApps that improve your ability to move around the apps more easily. Number 3 is an introduction that deals with basic search choices. We have 10 ideas that we suggest you consider carefully. You may need to stop and start this video a few times to take full advantage of the information here. You can stop, rewind, and re-listen if you missed something. And you may even find it is best to listen once, right to the end, and then go through it again more slowly, following the instructions very carefully. Idea 1. The most important advice we can offer is that you become familiar with the characteristics in the search at all levels. It is really an essential that you spend some hours playing with the app, if possible with any number of different plants in your hands, even if these species are not in the app and even if they are not actually trees. It is really most important that you do not try to identify any species while doing this. The first vital step is to become familiar with what the app offers you. It makes a real difference to learn about the app's capabilities if you do this without any pressure of reaching a correct result. You can do it indoors, even using photographs of plants, any plants, or collect a bundle of twigs to have on hand. One plant with thorns would help, but it is not essential, and you can always pretend that thorns are there. As another opening comment, it is worth giving a few thoughts to rapid finger syndrome. In any search, please do go slowly and try not to make mistakes. Rapid finger syndrome errors are fatal to reaching a correct ID. And idea 3, we are now going to look at the search. Open your app on the home screen. The search is the dark button in the middle of the upper row showing a magnifying glass. Select search by tapping it. This brings up the search tree screen. You will start all searches here and then move on through all the subsequent levels of choices of categories and subcategories that will define your species. As a demonstration, on the search tree, select the button marked Thorns. We've used these examples of a thorn sequence exactly as they appear in the Tree app, because the screens in TreePro Botanical are very similar. This first screen itself is similar in structure to most other screens throughout the search in both the apps. On the extreme left is a row of images, icons, that represent the plant characteristics. Next to each one is text that explains the image. On the right are a series of squares. You simply select, click, tap the square to the right of your chosen category name and icon. A plain square means that you have reached the end of that specific set of category entries. Any square that has an arrow on the right-hand side means there are more subcategories to follow. Steadily, as you use the sequences, you will become more comfortable that you understand the terms and their visual icons. Idea 4. If you're unsure of a category, do not enter anything at all. Skipping a category or a subcategory is better than getting it wrong. Fewer entries are better than too many. Basically, we're remembering the rule, never ever guess too early on. You can do some experimenting towards the end of your search, and that is where the fun is. Idea 5. Never ever guess too early in your search. Never ever think you may know the answer as part of the first processing. You can always go back later and see what happens when you guess, when there are far fewer trees on your list. For example, choosing the shape of this unusual fruit of Ferrea saligna, the willow buchenhout, could be a real challenge. In the Tree app South Africa, you select fruit to help you, and then select shape recently ripened, and after that, any other shape not listed here. However, if you are using TreePro Botanical, you'll have to know your science to be able to choose the correct shape. This app follows a random entry, random access program. And the more you are able to hop around the categories and subcategories where you do know that you are correct, the sooner you will master the process and get correct answers. At some point in the search, you will choose to see what species are still on your tree list. Look at the oval dark button in the top right-hand corner of the tree search screen, where a number indicates how many trees you have left. You can watch this number reduce until it gives you a short enough list of species to investigate closely. You can do this at any stage of a search, irrespective of how many species there are. But it is usually more meaningful, while you're still getting to know the app's capabilities, to check this only once you have reduced the choice to less than 10. When you're totally familiar with the system, and probably really only if you can recognize a relatively large number of species in your area, this search can comfortably be done with as many as 40 trees still on the list. Here it is 5 trees. The remaining trees on that potential list will have all the comprehensive data to help your search. We will discuss how you access that later in this video. Idea 7. Select any image. Usually start with the top one, to convert this to a single image of the selected species, and this will fill the screen. Look carefully at this image to see if it is possibly a correct ID. It is usually enough as a starting point to simply use Joan van Gogh's full-color artwork. This is always the first image for each tree. You can always go back a few minutes later to look at more photos of that species to clarify your search. However, start with a quick look at each of the trees that are still listed, only using Joan's artwork. You will often, even usually, know if this tree is not the one you are searching to identify. If this is true of any tree, select the bar at the top of the artwork where it says Remove from Results, and this will immediately reduce your list of choices. 2 things will happen. The species will disappear from your list, and the species number in the top right-hand corner will reduce. Idea 8. Browse through the image list, looking carefully at the image for each species. Do this by scrolling on the little grey arrows on the left and right of the image screens. Remove any you are sure are incorrect. It's the usual rule. If unsure, leave the image for later. Remember, never guess too early on. Idea 9. At the end of scrolling through the list, if you still have 5 or more images, you may choose to go back to an additional search through the characteristics in the search tree itself. This hopping around is part of learning to become totally familiar with your app. As I said above, this ultimately is where the fun and the skills are. However, please note that if you do this, in other words, going back to the main search, you will undo any work that you did in Remove from Results, and you will be back to your previous larger number of species. Therefore, usually, once you have finished your Remove from Results actions, you could prefer to look more carefully at the photos that are below each set of artworks and to read their captions. You can then compare your real species with the app images in greater detail. Idea 10. If you are still unsure of the species and have a few more to sort out, you could go to the information bar at the base of each screen. Again, you will use the grey arrows on both sides of the images to negotiate from one species to the next. Please note that again, we have taken these images from the TreeApp essay. The information texts for TreeProBotanical look very similar, but they do carry different text, as the data there is described in scientific botanical terms. By the way, there is no Remove from Results button when you are in the information section of any tree. You will have to return to images to do this. An overview of the above information. Experience with users has shown us that the majority of incorrect IDs are when the user has entered an incorrect search characteristic. This is either because they have misunderstood the item or simply through our famous rapid finger syndrome. Using the ideas above, This should reduce the number of errors you make and increase your pleasure. If you do find a data error, we are delighted to hear from you on ask@thetreeapp.co.za. We also enjoy more general input of any kind from users, as this will help us to improve the app for updates, and we never turn down a compliment. Enjoy using our magnificent TreePro apps and go out to discover and love 1,000 trees in our beautiful, diverse South Africa.